Hi everyone, it is Maya Lotz from the Energy for Life Wellbeing Practice, and I am your host for the Ocean of Abundance podcast. In this series, Crossing the Ocean of Grief, I am joined by the owner of Inspired Life and Grief Coaching Practice, educator, author, and speaker, Sandy Lotz-Weiner. In each episode, we will look at different aspects and topics related to grief. Welcome to another Crossing the Ocean of Grief episode. This will be our last episode in this series, Crossing the Ocean of Grief, and we are calling it Embracing Nature. Today, we're going to talk about having been out at sea and now being back on dry land, and now what? As always, I am joined by Sandy. Sandy, what do you make of this concept?
Good morning, Maya. It's lovely to be here, and I am happy to be on dry land. So, yes, crossing that ocean of grief, embracing nature. It's a big topic that we can unpack today, but it is one of my favorite topics, to be honest. I love nature. For me, it is a center point of my existence. And whenever I feel that I need extra support or just to go through my daily practices, there's always a nature element that comes in for me. So I'm a walker, and when I wrote Crossing the Ocean of Grief, I would sit in front of the computer and you get that same, now what? I had this great idea to write this book, and now I can't find the words. And I would actually take myself for beach walks, and I would walk, and the book and the answers would just come. So much so that I had to walk with a notebook so that I can remember the ideas that were coming up. So for me, nature is an amazing healer, and it helps to regulate my nervous system. So it's part of my daily existence. How about you?
Absolutely well said. Nature is healer. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. But the way we have been socialized, the way our societies are structured now, we are not even aware of the fact that we too are nature. We're not in nature. We are a part of nature. And instinctively, from very young, I was always drawn to nature. And I find nature very comforting. I think there's this need to remember we are nature and to embrace nature. So for me, just being in tune with nature, self-care practices where I'm regulating the nervous system, I'm waking with the sunrise and winding up my day as the sun sets, and choosing calmer practices in the evening or quieter practices, and also the seasons. It's just very much part of my lifestyle. Um, yeah, nature first.
Right. And she's always available to us. I mean, it's not like I have to go like, oh, I have to go to the store and see if I can find the right brand. No, she's on tap 24/7. And many things popped into my head when you were talking. One of them would be for people that are going through deep grief or anything that's worrisome for our minds, for that matter. We have our issues sleeping. Just part of the territory. We either oversleep or we can't stay asleep. So we wake up typically around about 3 or 2 in the morning and we're wide awake. And that's because it got quiet. And now our grief wants to speak to us. During the day, we're so busy. We can push it a little bit away. You know, there's that buffer of the busyness. But then when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, that grief says, I'm here, you're quiet, everything is good, let's chat. And I would at first resist because maybe you have to go to work tomorrow, so you're concerned about that. And then I realized that's not helping me. I have to work with this because lying there, looking at the clock, staring at the ceiling, doesn't make me go back to sleep. I learned using breath, obviously, as a technique to calm down my nervous system. But I also decided later on that, well, why don't I just get up, look out the window and see the bigger sky above me? Can I see a star? Can I see the moon? Is it raining? Look at the weather. And then later on, I actually even opened the front door and I listened to the quiet of the night. And it was so soothing for me. And it's like, all is well. Go back to bed after a while. Obviously, not the first time, but you train yourself to go, see, it's all okay. It's people are sleeping. You can go back to bed in the middle of the night when you're all on your own. The only thing I had was nature, right? Nature and breath work, and it made me feel calmer and safe in my own body, to be honest, safe in my own home.
It's interesting you say that. I was so relieved when I read Dr. Elaine Aron's work around the highly sensitive person or sensory processing sensitivity with a tool or a suggestion that, yes, indeed, as you say, we wake up then because the world is finally quiet. The noise has settled and our nervous systems sense this, and it's time for all the things you couldn't tend to, the incomplete loops and conversations, the niggles that you didn't get to, they now want to be heard. But the more valuable thing that I got from her input was the body doesn't need to sleep, but it does need to rest. So you can lie there and just listen and just hear what wants to surface without fighting it. I can look at the big erythrina tree and at the stars and the moon. And over time, I learned that those things that come up, they might need me to actually get up and put them in a journal. There are parts of my internal family system that want to speak and they want to be heard.
Yeah, it's because we are nature, right? We are not separate from it. We are nature. Nature is within us, and it feels like homecoming to me when I'm in nature. And I'm going to share something else that I remember. So we immigrated to the States, my late husband Tony and I, and 2003. And so you make it out of the ocean of grief initially, the ocean of the storm of this change of adjustment, and then things start to settle, and it's okay. We've adjusted to the initial period, but this is not home yet, right? Everything is still strange and weird. And I was walking, which is my natural thing to do, go for a walk to regulate my nervous system. I used that very effectively when I had to study to redo the board exams because you're sitting in a room trying to concentrate and you can only do so much of that before you need to move. I do. So I would go for walks in the leafy neighborhood we were in. And just that 20-minute, half an hour walk would get my brain refreshed because that's what nature does. It helps us with cognition and concentration. It would calm down my nervous system, regulate that. It will probably help me to breathe a little bit differently because I'm either maybe going up a hill or doing a little bit of cardio. And then I could go back to the books and study again. And I used to do this for almost 9 months on a regular basis. And it became part of my ritual to get me readjusted to my new environment and to be able to get through the exams. I remember one day I was walking because people think nature has to be far out in the wilderness. That is beautiful, but nature is also available in our gardens, in our homes. We can bring nature into our homes. There's so much we can do with nature. So I was walking under a bridge under the freeway, and it was just concrete jungle. And there was this little gecko. And I looked at this and I went, well, if he can survive under a freeway bridge in the middle of a city, so can I. And I'll never forget that because that was something that I carried with me for a long time. I might be in a strange environment, but I'm going to be okay. I can make this home. And so we can learn so many things from spending time in nature and being aware that this is part of our home. And even though we're a very small piece of it, it's all connected and it's a safe environment for us to expand into. We don't have to isolate to be safe. We can expand and embrace and still be safe and grow.
Beautiful. And you're never alone in nature. As you say, the gecko is there, the trees, the birds. Like you, if something troubles me, if there are things I can't solve, if I find I'm in my head too much, instinctively I know just be in nature. And if you're in an apartment building and you're on the 25th floor, you can have a little plant. When my first child was born, I had postpartum depression. And one of the things that gave me great comfort was my mum knew I loved herbs and she brought me a rose geranium plant. And just tending to that plant, just this one ritual of, taking off the dead leaves, watering it every day. I remember it as a soothing, grounding, comforting activity. The smell of the earth, the smell of the leaves. And yeah, so nature indeed as the healer.
I love what you said about tending to the plant, because there's something else there. Obviously, when your mind is anxious, Martha Beck, give your hand something to do. I think it was her saying. So that's that example of get involved with something. The touch of the earth is very soothing for our nervous systems. And it also even helps, I believe, with our immune system and our probiotics, bioflora, right? So getting that going on. And then there is the ritual of when you're in a tight spot, like your child is in a hospital environment and it's life or death, this piece I can control. It's similar to when you knit. The worst thing that can happen is I'll drop a stitch. This is a safe activity. It's a low risk activity that grounds you on some level. Touching the leaf, you also get the oils. People that walk in nature get the benefit of the chemicals that come off the plants, like forest bathing. It helps to regulate your nervous system. We know it helps with neurotransmitters like serotonin, right? We also know that if you're hiking, I like to go up pretty high because it's a cardio workout. I think that's the cheetah in me. If you're high up and you look down, my life problem seems to be a little bit more in perspective. It didn't go away. Temporarily, I shifted perspective, which to me is something that I love working with. Yesterday, I was walking on the beach and it was a beautiful morning. But when I turned 90 degrees, there was this dark cloud hanging over the horizon. The thought that popped into my head, it's all just a matter of perspective. If I look over the ocean, it's a beautiful day. And if I turn to the left, there's another cloud coming. And I thought about the thing about there's always something on the horizon, but nothing stays. So I think nature can help us move through change, even though there might be change coming. There will be change after the change. So it's evolving. It's not a stuckness. A lot of us get stuck when we're going through transitions. It feels like we're not moving or making progress. And then we have to shift perspective. And nature can help us with that because she keeps on transitioning season after season. Never the same, but always perfect.
I was involved in Montessori education for a while, and one of the things I learned there that has stayed with me is that the hand and the heart is connected. So when your heart is aching, move your hands. I know I often need vista. It is incredible, as you say, what happens when you can lift your perspective, change your perspective, and how it alters how you see the current situation, landscape, both internal and external.
Absolutely. And we also know that it doesn't matter whether it is a forest, the green part of nature, or whether it is the blue, the aquatic part, water bodies and forest. They all play a part in helping us heal and feel more safe in our bodies. In fact, think about the difference with perspective of being in the water looking at the land or being on the land looking at the big waves. And I'm thinking of body surfing because yesterday people were boogie boarding and it's a different experience, right? Being in the water with a boogie board or standing on the land looking at the big waves thinking, wow, that looks scary. When you're immersed in the nature, for me, when I step into that ocean and I become part of it, it's less scary than staring at it. I have to immerse myself in it, and because I am one with it. So it's like embrace it and move through it with it. Move with your grief. Don't just stare at it. Move with your grief through your day, into nature, into your daily routine.
So I want to pick up there to tie in for people why this is our last episode in the Crossing the Ocean of Grief and where we're going in our new series and new platforms with the same grief offerings available still to people, but we're taking this further. And the word immersion there was key. So there has been a death, there has been a giant life change that leads to a period of grief. And for a long time, you're in the water and you're treading water, and your nose is barely above the water, and the watery environment feels like it's going to swallow you whole, and there's depths below and land seems far away. But the more you're in the water, you become familiar, and you may even notice currents. And when you start to trust the currents again a little bit, you may start moving with it. And we are now saying we're going to move away from crossing the ocean of grief and start a second series where people have begun trusting the currents to the extent where they have washed out onto the shore. But the shore and the dry land is unfamiliar. And now they need to learn how to survive in this new nature, how to embrace nature so that they can begin to thrive again in their new authenticity, because who they were prior to the loss of a loved one, prior to whatever tragedy situation happened to place them in a position of grief. And now new supports are needed. So perhaps you can pick up from here where we're going. So what remains is anyone who has recently undergone grief and needs that crossing the ocean of grief, that platform remains with your book and your grief coaching. But we're going to the next phase now, where the person is no longer so lost at sea, but this beach seems very vast, and now what?
Very well framed, Maya. I love that. Yes, in the beginning, we fear those big waves because it's unknown. And then, if that life raft is going to stay upright for us, the life raft in the book that I use, to cross that ocean, we have to work with the currents. We can't work against the current because that will eventually bring us back to some kind of dry land. So we learn that skill in the survival phase already. But then we do end up in a space where, okay, we made it out of the water, but now we're in that lost phase, which some people can say stuck or lonely, the adjustment phase. I like to also call it the messy middle. You're kind of out of the big immediate threat, but you're way from where you want to be, and you don't actually know who you are. And you say it so beautifully. If you've lost a partner, like a life partner, we talk about the we to me phase. I was part of something different, even if it's a career, something we identified with in a big way. I was a doctor. Now I'm retired. Now what am I? And we have to start a new relationship with ourselves. We also have to find a way of reconnecting with the world, showing up in the world in a different way. And for a lot of us, this takes practice, and we need some support around discovering what is still here, because I still have skill sets. I just have to apply them differently. And I need to be shown how to do that. And I also need a bigger safety environment. My life raft was the small thing that I was safe on. On the dry land, my environment is bigger. So, what's the structure I need to put up here for me to be safe? How do I work with the elements? What are the new threats or the challenges or the opportunities? And trying to shift that and navigate that so that I can stay not just safe, but also grow and heal even more. And at some point, I obviously want to go and embrace a new civilization or a new society. It's almost like you're on the beach and you're just sitting there dazed and confused for a while, very happy that you made it out, but you know you're not where you want to be. There's something else that you need to explore. So you go into the vegetated part and you try and find pieces of driftwood or something to make a temporary shelter to get yourself some form of housing. But that's just temporary. You also have to go look for water and firewood and food and people. You need social. So you're trying to explore from your base camp on the beach. And on that journey, you learn how to adjust doing this on your own from this new space in your life. There could be some new challenges, but you've come through so much already that you know you can do this if you just keep on stepping forward and trusting yourself and working with nature to help you. We are self healers. if we can trust our natural instincts, if we can remember that we come from nature, that we are nature, and we can reclaim that, we can actually survive almost anything, and we can grow and we can heal. But it all depends on whether we are prepared to take the next step, to trust our instincts, to follow our intuition, to look for support along the way. Because as we move, we always need different support systems.
Beautiful. Yeah, that sense of, I don't know what to do, landing on that beach, and now what? And you say in grief, you used the phrase from we to me. And what I was jotting down was self care and who am I now? And the self care starting with the basic needs of humans: shelter, water, food, and as you say, connection, social connection. And then to remember and trust in nature, which includes in your nature, because you are nature too, and to come home to your own true nature. Who am I now? Who am I authentically? And yes, landing on that beach, you're safe. It's time to start growing. And if you take good self-care, then you're working towards thriving again and thriving in your authenticity as being nature, as nature, remembering. Yeah.
I love that. And there's no prescription because that's also how we've been socialized and cultured. Something that I've learned many years ago when I was doing health coaching, actually, everybody's bio individual. Some people can eat something and somebody else gets sick if they eat that. Some people can party all night and go to work. Some people can't. We're all different, right? And so even if you're working with a client, you meet the client where they're at. Everybody's in a different phase of their grief. Everybody's in a different phase of their life. Everybody's in a different stage of something. And it's about finding out what is right for me now. What is my natural next step? Well, I always say to people, because you want to have a little cheat sheet as to how to do grief. No, what works for me might not work for you. And so if we can trust our instinct, if something comes up for me, for instance, my case, dancing, that came up very big for me. And for some reason, dancing was a very healing experience for me. The movement of the body with music. Somebody else, if you throw it out there, they say, I'm not dancing. I'm not gonna do that. And I get it. Other people paint, other people run, cycle. We all need to find out what is it that my body wants that comes naturally to me, that is sustainable for me in my self-care practices, because I'm probably gonna have to do this for a while. And it's different for different people. So it's a self exploration. And what better container to do that in than with nature? This is your old home. This is who you are. This is not foreign to you. On a cellular level, we recognize that and we can work with that our natural nature and nature around us because it's all one.
Beautiful. And this is a beautiful opportunity to then say, so now we have landed on the beach and we are now looking at launching a new series, Nature as Healer. And we're really saying that in this new series, we want to talk about reconnecting with the world through nature and exploring. There's this concept in the yoga world, and it's a Sanskrit word, Leela, where we play, we begin to explore. And as you say, nature is that opportunity to look at things with wonder again, to be exposed to all the elements. It's multiple modalities that we bring in. Nature as the natural environment, nature as discovering who you are as your true nature, and modalities that we are going to work with and talk about in our new series will be things like Reiki, where you learn to come home to your true nature. We will offer activities, educate, inspire, and add on to this, sis. What are we going to cover in the new series, Nature as Healer? which will impact people who have come through the Crossing the Ocean of Grief, but is also now a new series which is applicable to a much wider audience, to anyone really.
Such a lot of juicy bits there. So food can be healing. But one of the self-care things is we have to feed ourselves. We want to feed ourselves for best energy, right? Self-care practices like breathing exercises, mindfulness techniques, art can be part of this, movement modalities like moving meditation, essential oils, homeopathy, natural remedies in the world, organic friendships, circles, forest bathing, cold water plunging. I'm just thinking of all these things that people can do to help themselves move through difficult periods, to give themselves a different exposure. I had a vision when I was doing a recent Holy Fire Reiki training in a meditation where the cue was to go back to the stream of life, right? And I've had that vision for a while. And so you had the choice. You could just do whatever you want to when you got to the river of life. But I decided to get into the kayak and go down the river and follow the light. And I got to the river mouth and I knew that I was going to choose to go back into the ocean, but not the ocean of grief, the ocean of abundance and possibilities, almost like the field of possibilities, the ocean of opportunity. But I also had this feeling that this can go towards a wider audience. More people can come into the community of whatever we're creating. So it's an expansion of sharing with people that have come through their own journey. We all need community. So expanding that so that we are doing our own work, but we have this connection with something larger than ourselves. And I'm going to go back to something else now because that kayak is a theme that's been going with me for a while. When Tony passed away, a couple of weeks after he passed away, I had this dream of the two of us in a kayak. When you're going down a river, sometimes there are islands or little beaches where you can park your kayak and picnic. So we're doing one of these, which made a lot of sense because we loved picnicking. And then after the picnic, Tony says to me, it's time for you to go into the river. I'm going to stay and rest a bit. And all of a sudden, my double kayak becomes a single kayak. And I knew that I had the incentive, calling, intuition, premonition, whatever in my dream, go back into the river, but on my own. And so when I fast forward 8 years later, because it's 8 years next Tuesday that Tony passed away, I have the same vision in a meditation of single kayak going into the river. But this time I'm not just in the river, because with Tony's dream, I never got any further than paddling in the river. I'm actually at the river mouth now and I'm entering the big ocean. So it's time. It's all I can say. It's time for something bigger. That's what I take from all of that, and to embrace more people in this, whatever we're creating together, sis.
So, what we're creating together, nature is healer, stepping into the ocean of abundance. And there's been the grief period, you writing the book, you focusing on the crossing the ocean of grief because that's where your calling was, where your work was, and you're stepping back into the stream of life. And we are now relaunching Inspired Life in collaboration with my practice, Energy for Life. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the offerings of Inspired Living?
So, of course, I continue to work with people one on one. There's a time and a place for that, and some people prefer that. In the initial phases, I think people need that one on one. I have also worked with hospice as a co facilitating a group recently, and I've learned how adding people that have come through a little bit of one on one into a group scenario where there's a social connection, it amplifies their experience. Not only do they get support for themselves, because remember, we're always doing the work for ourselves. When we put ourselves in that collective safe space, it's amplified. It's almost like one and one is three, not two, right? And so I will be offering group work, what I call closed groups, where people sign up for a specific period of time, 6 to 8 weeks, and we journey together and we're all working on our own together. This will be via Zoom, but I'm also looking to take this into nature, because that to me brings in another part. Not only are you getting grief support, you're getting social interaction and connection, and then you get nature, which amplifies. And then actually, there's a fourth modality that goes in there, and that is called movement. So, mindfulness, movement, nature, togetherness, grief support skills. That's where I'm going with this idea of ours. And then we will be doing collaborative workshops probably, which we'll offer via Zoom. I'm also bringing in some distance Reiki that I can do for my clients. Not everybody wants to always talk. Some people just need to get some energy healing. And I am looking to do Reiki infused oil blend. That will be on offer pretty soon. Journaling is another thing that I like to do. You can take that into the nature adventure, those groups walking together and having a journaling assignment for self exploration and as part of your self care. And writing. I remember, this is you telling me back in the day when I was running a lot. That's how I worked through a lot of my stuff. But then at that same time, you were raising children. And when we spoke about it, you used to say, I can't do the running. I can't be away from the kids that long. So I journal. When Tony passed away and I had to go back to work, and there wasn't the energy to run for starters. But also, I knew that if I started running, I'll never stop because it would become like an escape. So I chose not to run. I chose to work with a personal trainer to me feel stronger. But I chose the modality of writing every day, journaling, because I live on my own. Now I have to get the stuff out of your head. So journaling became my movement of the pen, and storytelling and using a metaphor like the ocean became my way of understanding what was going on with me. And writing the book, as painful as it was to revisit the memories 6 years later, and then to have my editor cut the pieces out that wasn't needed, which felt like my story was being ripped, right? But it's all good because we need to distance ourselves from our story about our loss. And the only way to do that is to rewrite the story, the narrative, take ownership of the narrative of your life. So that is something that I am going to continue to do. And Reiki infused writing, you know what I mean? Like it comes through you because really that writing was channeled sometimes through me by some higher power. I did the work, but it's coming from somewhere bigger than me. What's the right words? What's the right phrasing? How do I put this? These ideas are coming from somewhere bigger, larger than me. And then in the far, far future, when we are not oceans apart, but in real time together, who knows what that could look like?
Absolutely. Wonderful new expansion, an ocean of abundance awaits.
Ocean of possibilities.
So it's interesting because now you stand on the beach, and after treading water, you now indeed think, well, what if I sail across this ocean? What if I play in this water? You've befriended the ocean now, and it is now no longer the ocean of grief, but the ocean of abundance. And I use this. So if I come to my offerings, my practice is called Energy for Life. And I have what I call heart space practices. Yoga has been with me since I was 14, and I now offer yoga experiences in nature. They're Reiki infused because I'm a trained Reiki master. And for me to be present, to be guided in my offerings, I invite Reiki to be present before I go into my day when I do offerings. So it's Reiki infused yoga experiences in nature. Also work one-on-one. And I've gone from working in big groups to stepping into my authentic self, where I know that I am a small group person and I need to really be able to offer presence. And over time, where in the beginning I offered just pure yoga, I now very much infuse it with other energy modalities and tools that I picked up over the years that help me thrive. and have helped me come home to myself and accept myself and take good care of myself. And yes, nature absolutely key there. Being in nature, teaching in nature, sharing how much healing nature has to offer. Years ago, I developed something that I call aroma Reiki massage because it's just how my practice evolved. I ended up working often with women, and ironically enough, with women in grief who hadn't been touched forever. So I found that when I offered them aroma Reiki massages and working quite intuitively, but also with some of the energy modalities I've studied over the years, that really spoke to them because they also had the comfort. Reiki's present, the oils soothe, my touch is there. So yes, essential oils and how that connects to stimulating and calming and soothing nervous system and so much more.
And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that kind of collaboration with the modalities. And we can go on and on and on. I mean, we grow and we evolve and we embrace and we get scared, but we keep on moving.
It's so interesting because so much comes up. I mean, we are both in the third stage of our life. And I think that's a key area of our work too, that I see the people who really resonate with how I work are the people who are willing to show up to do the work, who grasp where we're all mortal and who are at that stage of their life where this is the third act and we're cleaning up and we're tidying up and we're embracing life again, and that childlike playfulness comes in again. Um, and two things that came up for me is our mom was very religious Christian. Our dad was agnostic. And he always said, I did go to church when, criticized or when somebody commented, probably Granny, that you didn't go to church. And he'd say, I did. I went fishing. I
I
sat
know.
on the rock for 3 hours and communed with the ocean. And that stayed with me all my life. That was one. And the other thing that came up was I was undiagnosed asthmatic and I've overcome it. Now, I teach what I've learned. So, with breathing, with yoga, with eating, with finding out what works for my body, so that I only share things that I've actually experienced. And I think you're the same. We're not ever sharing things that we haven't lived. So, this is lived experience. So, I'll give you an example. I have now at almost 60 decided to take up cycling, and initially it was just, I'm just going to go for a little ride. This has progressed, and on Saturday I decided to go for quite a long ride which involved quite a steep ascent. And when you go up steep hills, then that's often where the asthma will kick in. And I knew it was tickling because when I got on my bicycle on Saturday morning, I can now hear when the tone of my voice is different. So I always invite Reiki with me into my day. And then I also ask it to be present in my activities. So getting on the bike, I ask Reiki to be present. I acknowledge that obviously there's a little bit of nervousness because I'm going to attempt to do a bigger cycle. And when it came to going up the hill, I just had to giggle because every time I call it my tree to tree cycling. So when I notice, because I'm used to be afraid of my own breath, I used to be afraid of hearing my own heartbeat. That was my anxiety. And I've learned to overcome that. So now when I cycle, I can feel when my heart rate becomes irregular. So then I'll find a shady tree, I'll stop. And on Saturday, as I went up this massive hill, every time I stopped, I'd look next to me and there'd be these beautiful spider webs with dewdrops. And I would think of the web of life and how connected I am to everything. And I'd wait for my heart rate to settle and then I'd cycle again. And I would just keep on with my tree to tree practice like an orangutan. And finally, I got to the top of that hill, and there was this amazing vista. And the aloes and the hills looked like stars. And so I think for both of us, that's why I called it heart space practices, that this Nature's Healer, this new series we enter, it's very heart space. It's very real for both of us. We've lived it, and we're sharing what happens when you learn to trust again in nature and in your own true nature.
Absolutely. That is so beautifully said. And there's that similarity between distance running and distance cycling. You've called it tree to tree. I remember going up a hill because your heart was pounding so badly in your chest, you think you're going to like expire, that you would just go like, I'm just going to go to the next telephone pole or
Mm,
tree. That's all. That's my destination. And then when I get there, I can take a brisk little walk, and then you go pole to pole, tree to tree, and eventually you get to the top of that hill or whatever it was, and it's so rewarding. And you have learned that if I just stay with my breath, and if I just pace myself, and if I stop the chatter that says I'm going to not make it or whatever it says, I just stay with that breath and stay with myself and honor my pace. Forget about the
mm,
people running past me. I can make
mm,
it. I can get there in my own time and in my own speed. And I think that's really what life's about, because we are so conditioned that it's got to look a certain way, it's got to sound a certain way, or we got to get there like really quickly. Life is a marathon. Grief is a journey. It's not a sprint.
mm.
So it's about taking care, self care in every day and in every moment. And we will get we will get through anything if we honor who we are and where we are in that moment.
And talking about lived experiences, I've learned to come back to my stillness. Both of us have admitted that this coming back to a stillness, to that mindfulness, I gain so much more than all those years of chasing, rushing, trying to look outside. And this journey of healing with nature is learning to look inside. Everything you need is there already. There is nothing to fix. Everything is already perfect as it is. You're exactly where you need to be, even if the moment is painful. Just breathe, just be with it. There's nothing to fear. Learn to trust.
So true, because when we all get through the rush part, I mean, we can all associate with that. And when I find myself in that spot, I always look at who's pushing me, because sometimes it is from the outside, and then I have to disconnect with that, right? So don't rush me, what we normally say, but most of the times I'm doing it. And then I have to ask myself, what am I trying to get away from? What is so uncomfortable that I don't want to face it? But I have to slow down to get to that point, because either it is something that no longer serves me that I need to let go of permanently, or it's something that I have to face, a truth that I have to work with right now. But it can only happen if I slow down and embrace. Now we're going back to the beginning of our talk, crossing the ocean and embracing nature, your true nature, the bigger picture of nature, and where you are today in that process. I also think this might be a good place to start winding up our little talk.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to know how to get in touch with us besides listening to the podcast, I have a website. It's called www.sandylotzweiner.com. And you can email me at sandy@sandylotzweiner.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And if somebody listening to this podcast is going something that is really big and painful, I am so sorry you are here, and I'm so grateful you are here. Just keep breathing and reach out for support.
Thank you for that, Sandy. Sandy's contact details are in the show notes, and you can click through to her website. My contact details are there. And we thank you for listening to our series, or maybe just this episode. And we look forward to working with you in rediscovering and reconnecting to your true nature in future. Thanks for chatting with me today, Sandy. Lots of love.
Lots of love, Maya. Back to nature through nature, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.